Hey, this is Corey Stoker from SkySwitch, the VP of support. I also have with me several people, same people as last time. We have Derek Hennekins, product director for SkySwitch, Alona Giga, it's our development manager, and Frank Babusik, our chief operating officer. So we're here to talk today a little bit more about 10DLC and the changes that have been going on with it. Also to answer more questions for you, because it's a big confusing topic that kind of is changing daily still. So with that, I'll pass it over to Frank and we'll get right into it.
Yeah, hi, good morning, everybody. Thanks again for joining. We felt with all these changes and the changes in the communications of recently that we've been sending out, there was definitely a need here to review where we are today and what we're doing about it going and toll-free verification process. So I've taken a lot of emails and talking to many of you with regards to frustrations in this process, and we are too somewhat frustrated with the at a minimum weekly updates coming out of TCR. Carriers pushing down information, getting pushed down from Cineverse, etc. So in this space, the way the current environment is there's going to be probably more changes coming. We originally were going to turn off outbound messaging October 1st if you were not registered with a campaign. We suspended that that restriction due to the fact that there were so many problems that we're having with the TCR APIs and the changes that were coming. And it was literally last minute, October 1st, where they T-Mobile, recently announced that they were going to extend the grace period for registering the registration fees for their campaigns. With that said, though, October 1st, technically, we are all supposed to be compliant. No one pushed back or gave us a grace period on the compliance. We took it as a position as a company to allow outbound messages to continue, even though there's some exposure there. And I feel like there's the point to be argued that we could easily say, we've been trying, we've been doing the right things, and the ecosystem of the environment is such that it's not stable and not consistent. So that is why we are continuing pretty much status quo today. So with that said, I really appreciate everybody's patience, and believe me, we're not trying to cause frustration. This has been, pretty much almost 3 months now of us dedicating full-time resources to this and spending a lot of time in trying to get us to where we are today. With that said, I'm going to turn it over to Derek to talk through, but I kind of wanted to just set that tone and let you know that we're here for you to get through this, and we'll make it.
I want to throw in too that if you missed the last webinar or haven't watched it already, in some of the notifications we sent out about this webinar, there were links to the YouTube video for the previous webinar where we answer about 50 minutes of questions. So if you have some basic questions about 10DLC, you might be able to find them in there. We will try to address questions again in this webinar, but that's definitely a good resource.
All right, thanks. I'll kind of just do this real quick. We'll go back through just a quick reminder of what some of the acronyms are, things like TCR, the campaign registry, which is that authority of everything. CSP, which is the campaign service provider. SkySwitch, under that would be the resellers who manage all the brands. Again, the brand is identified as whoever the wireless subscriber feels or believes is sending the messages. The campaigns are basically the buckets or the use cases, and then the use case is what kind of content is going through here. So is it for me? So remember, everybody sending outbound messages through SkySwitch is considered A to P. That goes all of our applications, whether it's an email, SMS responder, or our Reach UC apps, everything. If it sends out, it needs to be a number that's in a campaign under a brand and assigned. So how do we get started? So there's a couple things that we did. Obviously, we had the original webinar, and then we also did a quick 7-minute video on, creating your brands, creating your reseller identification, creating your campaigns, and then assigning all the telephone numbers. There have been some updates to that. We're going to try to update the video and resend that back out. We've added some opt-in, opt-out, and some other options as well. Again, this is just kind of a quick overview of how everything kind of lines up, ties together, and connects to everything. Again, the telephone numbers are just assigned to a campaign. The campaign's assigned to a brand, and that brand is the entity sending those messages. Timelines and deadlines. Frank, did you want to kind of go through what's already been done? And since you already touched on that a little bit, what's in effect today?
Yeah, sure. So if you've registered a brand or a campaign, those fees are enforced. We have yet to see our first bill. There's been a lot of moving around on that, and I'm not sure what that's going to look like. But when we get it and we can sift through it and we can do our best to make sure anything that has not been billed correctly or we feel like was unfairly or billed to us, we will fight for that to get that removed. And we will then share those fees, pass through those fees to you on the next monthly billing cycle. As I mentioned earlier, nobody has stated that the enforcement for violations by DCA, which is basically our direct connect aggregator, that's Inteliquent, have been suspended. So we have to still be cognizant of who's messaging and what's being, what messages are being sent. I think, we have not seen complaints in this area. So I feel pretty good about our base and what our resellers and their customers are doing. But, that is out there and we have to be aware of what those violations are. We have documentations in our knowledge base that go into depth of, what some of that is. On October 1st, we got notice that Cineverse is charging Inteliquent $500 for what they call pooling numbers attribute or high volume message throughput campaigns. And it's $500 per form submission. You can submit up to 10 campaigns on a form. So effectively, we're going to be doing that in groups of 10 for those resellers who have more than 50 numbers SMS enabled under one domain, which would be a brand and a campaign, so that we can lower that fee and share that across a aggregated submission process. If there's an urgency in this, you could always say, hey, I don't care, I just want to pay the $500 and we can push it through. I think most everybody can work with the aggregated concept, because you can still, once you create a campaign, if you select pooling during the process, the registration process, and the campaign becomes active, you can assign 49 numbers right away. So what happens is we then send this, we asked you some information. We have a jot form link that basically I have completed, and I'll be sending out to some of the resellers today that are in this use case where they have more than 50 numbers they need to assign to a campaign. We'll be sending those messages out sometime later today with the links for you to complete that process, and then we will submit them to Intelliquent, who will send it to Cineverse. But I think the 49 numbers right away, as I was saying, you can apply them, and the campaign can be, your customer can be working. It would be the additional numbers that would have to wait, because Intelliquent basically sends that form to Cineverse. They approve it. T-Mobile actually, supposedly, I haven't seen it yet because we haven't submitted our first form, and SkySwitch is in this category with all of our employees needing their numbers SMS enabled. Supposedly they're going to send a test message. So I actually signed my number up for that test message. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen here once that happens. On October 15th is now the new target date for the SMS message writer. This has been delayed again because of all these recent changes over the last couple of weeks. We've been working internally to make sure basically the code of contact guidance put out by the CTIA matches what our carriers and everybody is requiring regarding compliance, and also fines and fees. And basically the language of our new SMS rider will basically just be stating that you're agreeing to these with updated pricing. And we're going to go into the pricing a little bit later, but we will be having a new acceptable use policy, or AUP, sometimes it's referred to as, and also a messaging policy that inside the rider will be referring back to that acceptable use policy and messaging policy in case there's changes. That will always be posted on our website and our docs, so that if there's any changes there, we can also send out a notification of any updates. We are expected to be able to enforce I should say the opt-in, opt-out, and help messages will be enabled. We're definitely going to be enforcing the opt-out right away. And we will be talking with you regarding the opt-in until we give some time for our resellers to understand how that process works. Derek's going to be speaking to that point a little bit here shortly. Come November 1, any TCR brands that have been in unverified status, as of yesterday, we had 34. We knocked down 20 today alone. So I haven't had a chance to speak to May. May is who's our L&P director. She's also going to be running our what we're calling our CSP division here to manage this process. This has been quite challenging to handle all the tickets and questions, but we're getting through it. We also intend to, given that there's no drastic changes or updates, and that we feel like that our message hub and our carrier gateway and our APIs and everything is sound and on good footing, we intend to start blocking outbound SMS messages that are unassigned from on a TN or a toll free if you do not have that process completed. We're also targeting new SMS and MMS pricing effective November 1. This gives us a whole month. So it's status quo until November 1, and then the new pricing will be kicking in on November 1. This gives us a month to kind of make sure all the reporting and everything is accurate, and gives the development team some time to check everything as well on the back end, and make sure the billing team is on the money here with what we're going to be passing through. December 1 is now the target date for T-Mobile's new $50 additional campaign registration fee. That is in addition to the TCR brand and campaign fees that are effective and enforced as of today. I mean, since previously they started, or since the registration actually began. So there's this other kind of elephant out there that's been talked about, and T-Mobile is considering a $5,000 per campaign for number pulling and high volume business review cases. This is on top of the $500 Cineverse business review that is effective as of October 1st. My personal opinion to that is that I think that either there's going to be I'm hopeful that there's going to be some consideration to companies like SkySwitch, which I've been talking with Intelliquent on a weekly basis and explaining our business model, our use case as an aggregator, just like they are, that, this is, just outrageous. I think
there could certainly be a good bit of backlash from T-Mobile putting prices that high. So kind of just waiting to see what happens there. Someone mentioned that no one seems to be really excited about this and is super stressed out with super and caps. So I think that's a fair statement. The 10 DLC just changing on a daily basis, and dramatic changes, not small, like minor changes, but really dramatic changes. It's hard to keep track of it. It's hard to relay the information that is kind of broken and changing all the time. And that's why we're doing the second webinar, to get everyone back up to date with everything that's changed and set the expectations. So I think after this slide, we're handing it over to Derek, unless Frank had anything else to say there.
No, that's about it for now.
All right. So let's get into some of the pricing. There's a few different spots we're going to look at. Obviously, the SMS entitlement. So turning on SMS capability is going to be reduced. Frank, I believe you reduced that by about half. So previously it was to set it up. It was a little bit more. Also, we've got some pricing for the quantity. So if you get obviously up and over 500 numbers, the price goes down. So SMS entitlement, your MRC is to keep it running. Your NRC is to set it up. The brand, that stays the same. So every time you register a brand, that's a $4 is one-time fee. The campaign, again, there's two prices to the campaign. You've got your initial $50 per campaign that starts on 12/1. So if you're creating campaigns today, you're only going to get charged for that monthly fee, as well as the brand NRC. Going forward after 12/1, obviously the price to set those two up goes up by $50. And then here at the bottom, these are our posted prices per message, inbound, outbound for A2P, both SMS and MMS. And that will be, again, inbound, outbound for all messages will be billed except for things that don't get delivered. Let's see here. We'll jump into some of the new changes. There's been some questions on some of the charity and nonprofit classifications. And so I sent a message into Campaign Registry last week trying to figure out what the difference is. They say that according to the IRS, all charities are nonprofit, but not all nonprofits are charities. And so there is a little bit of differentiator there now. If you register as a nonprofit and are not verified charity, you are able to utilize any of the use cases, whereas a charity verified brand will only get to use the charity mixed use case. So the campaign can have one and up to 5 different use cases. The new one that we have here in progress is the sole proprietor. So this is a company that doesn't have any EIN or tax validation. So just your solo worker doing some work on their own. Maybe they're doing 1099, or maybe they're doing a Social Security for their taxes. This one is in progress at this point. It has a little bit different requirements and reporting back to TCR. So we're working on making sure we're capable of hosting these as well as reporting on these. This one is limited though. So the sole proprietor, if we get this turned on, will be a lower cost So your monthly cost will actually be down to 75 cents. You will have only low volume mixed campaign capable. You won't be able to use anything else. So you'll be limited to obviously the 1 to 5 cases, and then whatever the text per minute or max per day messages the low volume has. Another thing to mention about campaigns, campaign, once it's created, you cannot edit it. You can't change a function. So for example, if you create one low volume mixed and you had 3 use cases and you had to add another one, that means you're going to have to create a new campaign and new fees will apply. You're still on the hook for the first campaign. So it's best and recommended to get all the proper use cases for the low volume mix to make sure that if they want to start doing marketing or 2FA or anything like that, they're signed up correctly and you have enough to cover that campaign. The only thing they can edit going forward is going to be the description. And so if you need to clarify whether it's a different department or whatever, and that's already in place, you're not making any changes to it, you can edit the description only. Number pooling.
Let me add to that, sample messages can be edited too.
Yep. Oh, yeah, that's right. Sample messages. So along with all of these campaigns, and we'll get to there's a sheet at the bottom too that talks about sample messages. When you do the low volume mixed, we pre-populate at least one sample message for each of the cases. If you only pick one case, it's best to send us a few samples. We have seen some carriers deny a campaign because a single sample on a single use case is not quite enough for them. So there is a button on there to add more samples as well. So if you pick 3, you can have up to 5. So feel free to add as many as you want, up to 5. The number pooling, we talked a little bit about that already. We are going to make that a slightly different change in creation of the campaign so that it's not just a little tick box. So that there are going to be some portal changes coming up here soon. The last couple of things that we got a few slides on are going to be the SMS and MDR reporting. So there's 2 different reports for SMS that have been added in addition to your routing and usage. So you got your SMS extended now. Let's see if we got that on the next slide, or expanded, sorry. So this is going to tell you everything all the way down to the count. So inbound, outbound, and this is more of a tally kind of report. So you can do a time range. You can kind of get an idea of how many messages per domain and spin out some of that information. Might be helpful to see, if you're charging, bundles versus usage. This with the counts here will help you out understand who's using more. So MDR. As the next one, this is coming. This is due in our next sprint of changes. This is going to be available hopefully this week, maybe next week, and I think Alona can confirm. But this is going to track all your inbound, outbound classification, timestamp, everything that you would have on a CDR, but from an MMS and SMS perspective. So if we get it delivered or has failed or any of that type of stuff, we're going to be able to track this from a billing perspective, as well as you can take that and should be importable into carriers or billing platforms based on your billing platform's capability. So depending on how you bill today, there may be a little more complex as there's a couple different classifications and campaign IDs and things like that are added. So that's something to take into consideration. The report should be available, like I said, later this week or early next week.
So let me add to that, Derek, a few things. One, on the slide before, going back to sole proprietorship, we said it was in progress. The reason it's in progress is that was not available through the API. We have the sole proprietorship in there as a dropdown, but it was blocked at the API. They've recently required a separate agreement from us as a CSP to basically regarding sole proprietorship is to throttle messages and monitor the messages and report the messages back to TCR. There's also a data handling agreement that we sign, and it's basically it's just good practices of data management and data handling, which you would find in most terms of use agreements regarding data handling or customer CPNI information. So that's illegal right now, being reviewed, and we also have some questions out to them around that. As I was mentioning earlier, we have not got our first bill, and this other item right below that, talking about you can't make changes or edits to a campaign once you submit it, and those fees are, going to be enforced. So we intend to fight for anything that was maybe had a mistake, if it was mistakenly entered and had to be then thereafter corrected and deactivated and a new campaign was created. We'll fight for those to be waived, those fees. But I cannot promise you if that will happen or not, but that's my intention, is to try to make that align to what's actually being used, especially since a lot of these problems have come from their communications and their systems. So that's all I really wanted to say on that part.
All right. All right. So those are the two added reports. We're going to jump into the opt-in, opt-out help. So in all of our messages that we send out to wireless subscribers, as far as giving them information as to how to opt in, opt out, or stop that type of stuff, spam, we're only going to stick to start, help, stop, and spam as far as what we have in the messages, but we will respond to things like subscribe, unstop, unsubscribe, quick cancel, and possibly even end. So what's going to happen here starting hopefully this week is sending out the enforcement for the opt-in, opt-out, and help. So there's a couple different ways a consent message is received. One, you could import your opt-ins via the portal. So you can collect via email or telephone calls or even messages on any of your opt-ins, and those can be put into CRMs, taken out, and then opted in into the portal as well. So same thing with opt-out. So if you have a list of that already, you can go ahead and pull those in. The way the consent messages are going to be sent out is implied versus explicit. So implied is if a wireless subscriber sends a message into a campaign, they are automatically going to be responded back with a message that says, you've sent a message into a campaign, here's how to stop any future messages. Versus if a A2P user on SkySwitch's platform sends to a wireless subscriber for the first time, and there is no opt-in or opt-out messages, they're going to send a message that says, hey, you're being contacted by X, and to receive these messages, reply with start. And so that'll help collect the opt-ins. The opt-in is tracked in the system, whether it's imported or whether the message that they sent in. Same thing with opt-out as well. They are not case sensitive. So if somebody mistypes it, with capital letter, lowercase, it doesn't matter. The one thing that we have seen is that it's a single word response only. So if somebody says opt me out, we're only going to assume that's a full message, and that's going to get passed into whatever application it was destined for. And the last piece that we're adding in here as well is help. So with help, the requirement here is that a wireless subscriber should be able to get information based on knowing that they're in a business conversation. So if they don't know if it's spam or what, again, spam will opt you out, but they also have the ability to type help. And so what we're going to be sending out here is going to be brand information, such as like a name, and then possibly either email address, URL, or telephone number at the campaign level, along with the campaign ID as well. So if a wireless subscriber calls in and gets a message and they type in help, they have the ID of basically who's trying to communicate with them and some contact information to get further information. So if they wanted to call in and understand how they got on a list or whatever, they could do that. I think the next one is a screenshot. So this is in the works right now. So this is just a screenshot of the portal on the opt-in, opt-out helps. So basically, if you pick a branding campaign, you're going to first see the acquire consent.
Excuse me, it's actually available. We've updated like an hour ago.
See, everything's constantly changing.
Okay.
But anyways, this will give a pretty good idea what we're trying to do here. The first one is the acquire consent. So send this consent message to all destinations before allowing the actual message to be sent. So that's how you're going to get an explicit opt-in. You're going to tell the wireless subscriber that a communication is coming and give them the option to accept it or opt out of that. There is a radio box below it that says do not send the consent message. So this is the reseller and the end user organization understanding that if they don't send the consent, the explicit consent, that they have that relationship and their clients already know that communicating with them is going to come at some point from an application. So when the wireless for subscriber replies back, that's an implied opt-in. So this message will get sent out. If it violates anything, then obviously we'll take an action of recourse on that. But when they respond back in, they are opted in at that point. The implied opt-in, again, will get information sent back to them that says you've replied to a campaign, here's your way out. And then then there's the help. So if you type in help, again, this is where you're going to have your brand and your communication, email, website, or telephone number that's at the campaign level. This is right now in this screenshot, it was editable so that we could pre-populate this and get everybody at least up and running with some sort of response within help. I believe Alona, correct me if I'm wrong, but we've changed this now to you can pick whether it's the email or the URL.
Oh, that improvement will be for next week, but
Okay.
The opt-in, opt-out tables, they can import and export today.
Okay, perfect. So again, since it's ever changing, there's going to be a little bit difference in this. So we're just going to try to make it as easy as possible, and then pre-can a message and then pull in the information that's at the campaign level, just so that you don't have to come up with an entire help script or anything like that. So if you need it edited or changed, I believe in the future you will be able to change like the name of the company if you're identifying as either DBA or some sort of marketing campaign type of thing. So that'll be in there as well. Now at the bottom, here's your table that's going to show all your opt-in, opt-outs. There's a button that you can push to enable this. So what you got here is the DID that you're working with and the subscriber number and whether or not they hit start, subscribe, all of that, and when they opted in. And the same thing, if you import them, you can see that it's an import from the origin as well. And then this just repeats down to the opt-outs. It's the same process for opt-in, opt-out. Is there anything, Alona, that we missed on the opt-in, opt-out and help?
We're good.
Okay, we'll get to questions then at the end here. Some of the common errors. This is the last slide, and then we'll get to the conversation. There's a couple of common errors that we've seen come back. Number assignment failed. This is a couple of things. Again, IntelliQuint is our carrier for automated message assignment. So SMS being associated with a campaign that's automated right now today with IntelliQuint. It's a manual process if that telephone number is with anybody else. So you might see that, email CSP at SkySwitch within the portal when you're trying to assign campaign numbers to campaigns. Campaign registration, again, this was going back to the when you only have a single use case, it is possible that you might need multiple samples for the sample messages. That has come back once or twice where it was just one sample message with one use case and it wasn't enough. So, and then try to be a little specific in your samples. Basically, a lot of them are pre-populated with something pretty generic, but if you have something very specific, add a couple extra, it can't hurt. Brand failures to register. So if your EIN is incorrect or is missing or something's going on there may have to be a document submission in the future. That is something that if you can't get it verified right up front, be sure to contact CSP at SkySwitch. We can check and see if it's an actual issue, if it's a specific carrier, what the issue is, and we can try to guide you through that. One of the other things we've seen too is with the campaign registry being, ever changing and new rules and all the stuff, and it's always 11th hour when it comes to making the changes before some sort of compliance requirement comes up is the extra workload that's put on their API. So we have seen some TCR APIs time out, and then basically with that happens and you're remaining unverified, go back in and edit your brand and resubmit, and that should fix it. Again, if it still fails, contact us and let us know. And that shouldn't take very long. Brands should usually take about a day or two to verify. And then as Frank mentioned, unverified brands. So at the end of the month, we got till the end of this month to get everything verified. And we did have a lot of them, like Frank said, about 20 of them verified in the last 24, 48 hours. So we're getting down there as far as the first step being all done. Obviously, the second step is making sure your campaigns are created, and then the last step is to make sure your telephone numbers are assigned. If your brand is still unverified at the end of the month and there is an error, we may have to do independent vetting, and that would be a different fee. So there is verified, and then there's vetted, and vetted usually goes an extra step further. So there's been some talk about whether or not like nonprofits and things like that, if they say they're charity, you may have to prove that you're not. So in those types of cases, we may have to go down the road of vetting.
So let me say a couple other points on that slide. The number assignment failed. This can happen, especially for our BYOT customers. You know, it's a best case effort that we try to support SMS on that. But if we're having a hard time getting that number on our network, we may require a SMS LOA from you to help push Telequent to get that number moved over to our NNID. Regarding the campaign registrations, the key here is if you're doing low volume mix and you're choosing a couple attributes, you want to put in a couple different sample messages for those attributes on the low volume mix. That one may not be enough. If you can, the more you can put in, not saying make up information or make it up, but do your best to anticipate what that brand or company is trying to accomplish, and the more you put in, kind of it helps. We are also on our side looking at trying to figure out exactly how we can make it intuitive in the portal to prompt you to put that information in. Alona and her team's working on that. And then the unverified brands, we're trying, we're gonna keep pushing, and we're trying, as we learn, we're trying to help resolve that from happening in the first place. So that's all I have there.
All right. So Corey, did you want to kind of walk through some questions? Looks like we do have a few.
Yeah, sure. So Mark Rowe asked, I thought the $50 fee was per brand and not per campaign. Was that incorrect?
That was the understanding originally. And as more and more information came out from TCR, that was clarified a couple of weeks back, where it was very specifically T-Mobile wants the $50 and it's for the creation of the campaigns.
Right. And that's the one that's going to be beginning on 12/1.
12/1, yep.
That's where it's scheduled currently. It's been pushed back several times.
So anonymously asked, I see mention of T-Mobile, but what about Verizon and AT&T? It's really just simply because T-Mobile is the one charging high fees, and AT&T and Verizon are either very low or there's no additional fees.
Well, let me add just a little bit more on that. T-Mobile and AT&T are the force behind that, aligned with TCR. Verizon is participating, but they've already set up their own A2P gateways, and all the carriers are setting up their own A2P gateways for message handling. So Inteliquent, Bandwidth, Twilio, they're all going on these A2P gateways. And that's why, we have residential users or Reach UC users. We get this question constantly. They're just using Reach UC. Why are we having to be compliant? And the bottom line is everything that we send through Inteliquent, and if it was flow route or if it was bandwidth or whatever, it's classified as A2P 10DLC. So we are bound by these guidelines. And this is one of the questions I saw. I think it was Fred asked telco experts that if is there any regulatory governing body, and the FCC is not at this time regulating this program. It's more of a consortium effort between the wireless carriers And I think that's going to be, challenged, just because you can see the confusion that's been going on for the last, 90 days. And I think companies like ourselves and our carriers and our providers, I think the FCC is probably getting an earful of complaints and asking to probably step in. But I think in the end, good sound decision is going to prevail. I'm not sure if at this point, knowing what's been put into the TCR and what the carriers and the gateways and Cineverse and everybody's put into this program the way it is today, I don't know how much it'll change. Meaning like, will the FCC come in and say, hey, no, and will the carriers abandon it? I don't think it's too late to abandon it, but I'm not getting any signals or any messaging from that happening. So we have to continue to under the premise that we're going to be, this is the way it is, and this is the landscape. Our job here at SkySwitch is we're trying to, streamline this process as much as possible. We're trying to do things in the portal that will empower you to not only go out and sell SMS, but, let you have the peace of mind knowing that there's some checks and balances in place for compliance with our opt-in, opt-out and help. And we're also going to be doing reporting on the error code so that you can see if there's problems out there, or if you have a company that's, getting high levels of spam or stop, you may want to, let them know. And that's the purpose of the brand and the campaigns registering independently. It's so that those companies are somewhat siloed, and that way it doesn't feed on up and affect your good customers. A few bad actors at one company could, if it was everybody could just be under one brand and one campaign. Sounds easy, but unfortunately, you can't control what someone may be doing on Reach UC in an office and sending messages out. So that's all I have right there.
Yeah, and there's some interesting stuff around the FCC in this, and it goes back to 2018 when SMS and MMS were declassified as telecommunications, and classified instead as data and information. So they're no longer governed by the FCC, and they would ultimately have to get governance back to be able to regulate this. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but kind of the way it is. So next question from Doug Button: can TNs be moved to different campaigns without cost?
Yeah, I don't think there's any fees at all as far as the telephone number association to a campaign. So you can disable them and remove them. So if you go to the SMS, the assignment tab, there's bulk remove, bulk add, then there's individual plus and minuses in there, but there hasn't been a fee associated with moving it from one campaign to another.
Yes, you can do that, but you got to be careful. They can consider it snowshoeing if it's a problematic number. So if you're doing it for valid reasons and there's no problems, it's not a problem. If your customer's doing it to, because they're getting stop or spam, and then they're trying to just set up another campaign and move forward, you don't want that to happen. So
it will ultimately affect the brand, so it'll catch up.
And so just so everyone knows, I saw a couple of people asking, hey, have you seen some blocking by AT&T? And yes, we've heard of some of those, some of that happening. We're getting reports right now from our carrier on like messages that are going out that are not related to a campaign. And that's why we are, you're getting the communications from us. Hey, get in there and register your brand and your campaign and get these numbers registered. But it's more of a courtesy right now, like letting them know, like, because the carriers are not doing this, like what we're doing for our resellers. If you were to go with direct, say to Inteliquent or Bandwidth, they're not going to provide these tools for you. They'll provide the registration process, but they're not going to be doing the opt-ins, opt-outs, the helps. And this is not going away. And any other provider that's out there, that if they're not doing that, it will catch up to them. And I don't, there is a couple people asking me about, well, what's, Ring Central doing, or 8x8, and other white label providers. And some of them are, I've been told that they're telling their customers not to worry about it. I don't think that's a good approach. I think as a consumer, we've all gotten unwanted messages, and this is a reflection of voice and stir shake in the messaging world, and I don't think it's going to go away. So whatever happens, I think the opt-in, opt-out, and help, and reporting error codes and delivery, and I think it's a necessity in our ecosystem moving forward for all small businesses that are going to see the growth in messaging continue to pick up. We've been seeing the growth in messaging over the last year and a half or so, and it just continually rises as more and more small businesses take advantage of the tools that are out there to communicate with their customers through messaging, and cut down on customer service and phone calls. We have a new messaging platform that hasn't been released yet, and maybe only a few of you have potentially seen it. But this framework right here that we're talking about today will sit in front of that platform as well. That one is a much more robust, business-centric drip campaigns, marketing campaigns. We're going to be doing other really pretty neat features tied in with our PBX. And I think it's going to be a game changer, and it's going to open some doors up for our resellers to go in there into the marketplace and have a competitive advantage. So we're excited about that. This kind of, like I said, we have to take care of our business rules and practices first. And but we'll be super excited to release that here, I think in the coming, I would say in the coming month. Okay, Corey.
Okay, so back to some questions. Christine Robinson asked, is the opt-in, opt-out requirement a requirement for all campaigns? And does what you select under low volume mix determine when it's a requirement? I see a conversational messaging option, but it has the same selections as the low volume mix we selected for all our customers. So that, yes, the opt-in, opt-out is a requirement for all campaigns. And does what you select under low volume mix determine when it's a requirement? No, so it's always going to be a requirement for any A2P messaging. Christine has a couple of questions in here, so I'll go to the next one. The response received to the text sender needs to be simpler. She shows an example response where it says network message opt-in, request received, handled for campaign with the campaign number, and customers aren't creating the campaigns and showing the campaign code is confusing. So will we be able to customize these responses? And if not, can these please be simplified or clarified?
So I could probably talk to that one a little bit. Alona, I believe you're making a couple of changes as to what's prepended to the message, and I think we landed on just sys message
Yes,
versus
correct.
the other one. And then part of the rules that we talked about as well is simplifying and causing too much misinformation. Like nobody's going to know what a campaign ID is as far as a wireless subscriber is concerned. So what we ended up doing was we took the campaign ID out of that message that goes to the subscriber unless they type help. So back and forth, end, subscribe, those types of things. It's just going to say, start, stop, those kind of messages, and let you know that you're part of a campaign. But in order to get more information, when you type help, that's when the brand and the campaign information, including the campaign ID, is going to be given back to that wireless subscriber. That way they can call up and say, I'm getting messages when I type in help, this is the campaign ID. But we're not gonna put it on every message like the original intention looked like. So that has been cleaned up and simplified.
Okay, so this is a good question. If we are all campaigning, what happens when a campaign to campaign, or what happened? I guess they're saying if a campaign sends to another campaign, how do they acknowledge each other to get the conversation started?
So internally, Alona, I don't think we're sending opt-in, opt-outs if it stays on net, right?
Yes, for on net numbers, no opt-in, opt-out needed.
Yeah, we could potentially run into issues with other providers, so that's something that will have to be thought about and implemented. It is a good question there. So we got
Yeah,
regarding.
But let me say this, opt-out will always be enforced. So we will always enforce opt-out. We should always be enforcing opt-out. If someone does not want to receive a message and they say stop or spam, even on net, that should not be allowed to happen.
Yeah, I think what he's saying is when you send a message to another campaign that requires you to opt in before you can send to them, then will you get the response message and be able to see their response and type opt in to their campaign. We'll have to go through that. That's
But if the first person that's sending the message, isn't it a implicit opt-in by the first message going out from a party?
It's only implied coming in from a wireless subscriber. Otherwise, it's explicit going out.
okay, great. That's
All right.
cleared up for me.
We'll address that internally. We'll provide an update if that use case happens.
Okay, so George was trying to register a nonprofit, which is not a charity, but we were forced to use the charity use case when registering a campaign, which they are not. Why is that?
So that was what was cleared up last week. So I did email them and say, all charities are nonprofits, but not all nonprofits are charities. And so in doing that, they did change it. So if you're verified not charity, you can use low volume mixed or any of the other campaign types. But if you're deemed charity using the verification or vetting process, then you have to stick to the campaign for charity, which is a mixed campaign. So
we got a request for sample messages. What kind of sample messages should we input if none of our customers are actually using campaigns and quotes, and just do like P2P style messaging? So I think George is looking for some just example P2P messages, maybe some template messages to throw in.
So in the back of your mind, when you're saying low volume mix use case, if you're selecting that for reach UC users, because this is where most of our customers fall into. We have some customers using vBroadcast or bot responder. It may be a little bit different. But if you're doing low volume mix, what in the back of your mind is what the way I try to phrase it is it's conversational messaging for sales or employees or staff through a mobile app tied to the PBX, the company's PBX system, right? And so you could use any sample message. It could be anything that you would think that would normally occur between an employee and say a customer, or employee and another employee. Like, I'm running late for our 1 o'clock appointment. Is it okay to move it back to 1:30? I mean, it could be that, that simple. Just we actually have some sample messages, I believe, available during the process. Alona, is that correct?
Correct. It depends on the use case or sub-use case used.
So what I'm pushing when I talk to Telequin a lot is like, look, we're a white label provider. Our resellers are selling to our customers, and they are basically using a mobile app, which is an extension of their PBX. So I try to tie in whenever possible, that association in any of these communications, so that I think that's a very accurate and fair statement, and would help when you, especially like the number pooling. You'll see in the form, for those you have more than 50 numbers on a company, I actually put some sample message in there for that process, and you're welcome to use that or change it slightly, or add to it or take away. So, okay.
Okay, so any way to exclude any of the mobile carriers from the SMS? That may be something that happens if T-Mobile starts enforcing a $5,000 fee for high volume campaigns, but I don't think at this time.
At this time, we cannot do that. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so George says we need help from SkySwitch and other companies like SkySwitch to fight back on our customers' behalf. This seems like a money grab by these big companies. Yeah, Twilio actually tried fighting this with the FCC, and against, they were ruled against. So the only real way to fix it is to file complaints with the FCC, and there's volume by just volume into the FCC. Complaints going into them is going to be probably the best action to happen. So if everyone kind of sends messages to the FCC or complains to the FCC about it, then there may get some traction. That's the hope there. But unfortunately, there's not a lot we can do from this side. It's all privatized, so that the big companies can do whatever they want at this point for accepting inbound messages to their networks. So Jeff Jensen asked, are all the major carriers exempt from this? And I assume you're meaning wireless carriers. Yeah, so wireless carriers, if you have a phone number and using the default messaging app, is considered P2P, while pretty much everything else is considered A2P. So they are in some way exempt from it. But if they were using applications,
Let me say it this way. Let me state it this way, Corey. You're either P2P or A2P. You're a P2P wireless. If you're a wireless subscriber and you're getting billed by a wireless carrier, you're a P2P. If you're a business and you're going through an aggregator gateway, like IntelliQuint, Bandwidth, FlowRoute, Tele, or even Verizon has an A2P gateway, or AT&T has an A2P gateway. If you're on that, if you're in that path, if you're in that tunnel, you're A2P. There's no getting around it. So that's how the classification is working. So I wouldn't say wireless carriers are exempt. They're not, I guess they're not in that category of A2P. A wireless subscriber is P2P. So they can text to A2P, and an A2P can text to a P2P, but it depends on where the gateway is. It depends on which gateway that outbound message is going through.
Yeah, and there are definitely wireless carriers that also have like other services, LAN services. So that's a good question. But the penalties for saying you're P2P when you're actually sending A2P are extreme. So even those carriers in those situations would probably follow the 10DLC for going off of their own network. let's see. So further clarification, we have set up a general brand and campaign just to cover initial development. As we develop brands and campaigns for customers, can we simply move the TNs to a new campaign? The answer is yes to that. Let's see. So is a recommendation for us to make all brands and campaigns for each of our clients, or do you think it's advisable to silo general usage under a specific general use campaign? Our recommendation is to do campaigns and brands per client. You just don't want to poison the well and prevent your other customers from being able to send out messages. You can certainly do that to some extent, but it is dangerous to do.
There's a good diagram in our FAQs that show how that could affect you.
Right. Okay. So if I understand this correctly, if a wireless customer sends a SMS to a number, which is a responder bot, and the bot responds, it's considered an implicit consent and no opt-in required. Correct? Yes, that is correct.
They will receive an opt-out message to let them know that they are in a campaign and have options.
Good information. Okay, if the client is using SMS to email with reply, which is a responder service, does opt-in, opt-out apply because the sender is essentially opting in by sending the message first and the client is simply responding to it?
That's an implicit opt-in.
Yeah, a little thrown off by the wording, but I think we're right there. Thanks, Alona. So I'm assuming, sorry, the grammar is a little messed up there. I'm assuming correctly with T-Mobile Verizon comment that each of the campaigns need to be registered with each individual carrier to communicate with those customers on those carriers.
So basically, when you're registering a brand in a campaign, when you register a campaign, it actually, TCR is an aggregator database. So that information is basically posted and then the carriers dip into that. And if I think they just have a quick, it's pretty much, if there's no vetting involved, you're getting and you got a verified brand, you're basically coming in unvetted and you got low score, verification score, because you have no verification score. You just only got your brand verified. And that's what the whole low volume mix does. It's pretty much a streamlined approval process, and AT&T and Verizon and T-Mobile. There's a few other carriers. Alona, is that correct? In the campaign that comes back that it actually shows approved?
Yes, but we're not getting that information right now. So we're asking TCR to provide that via web callback. So there are API limitations yet for TCR. The information is available in TCR, but we're not immediately updating that in our portal.
Right. So once we can have the access to the APIs to see that information, we will show that to you in the portal. If there is, because when you're doing it in the actual TCR portal, you can see the carriers as they approve it. Sometimes it's pending for a few hours with one carrier and then it's approved. We will provide that. What you're seeing in the flow that you see in our management DID portal is the process is almost identical to what you would experience if you were registered with the TCR directly. That's a fair statement, Alona?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't get this one, and it's from Ben Rush, and I don't know if I'm being set up, but can you define snowshoeing? I'm a desert dweller. I live in the desert, so
So,
I
yeah,
can't.
I can, it's basically when you're moving around campaigns to try to duplicate the same message under a brand. So you're using the same campaign and numbers, and you're just creating more campaigns, very similar messaging underneath that brand. If they see you're flipping numbers back and forth, or they're seeing multiple campaigns from the same brand doing the same messaging, then they would consider that snowshoeing.
I think a simpler way to understand that is they're taking the throttling and capability of a single number and putting it to a campaign. So you can't go from number to number to bypass throughputs. You just take that throughput requirement and take it up to a campaign at that point. So regardless of the number it comes from, your limitation is at the campaign level. So
Correct.
you effectively don't need to send it from 5 different numbers in order to get the throughput you need. You just have to have the correct campaign type.
All right, so we're actually getting close to the end of the questions. George again asked, can SkySwitch organize an effort to file a joint complaint with the FCC and have all SkySwitch resellers sign on, or maybe provide a sample letter to resellers that we can complete and file? Nope, that might be something good to look into. Again, the problem is too that it's no longer FCC territory, so I'm not sure how they're actually going to even respond to these types of complaints right away. And that's again where maybe volume kicks in. I think we'll look into that. I'm not sure what we'll be able to do there. Frank, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, I think we should express the not only what we've gone through these last few months, but also the possibilities of the unknowns that the power of these wireless carriers have over this process. I think that that flag should be raised, and I think that the track record that has been documented to this point is concerning for the future, and I think that's the message that needs to get to the FCC. I haven't championed that project yet, but I will talk with our provider, and I've spoken to their department leads in this area, and they're quite frustrated as well. At the same time, we're just we're trying to accommodate the system. You know, to me, the train already left the station, but it's just so.
Yep.
I have it on my list to do, and if there's something organized, we will be sure to share it and allow any other resellers to join in with that.
Okay, so I have a client with 68 DIDs. They use it exclusively on ReachUC and only to communicate to individual clients. These
Yes.
are, yeah, so how am I supposed to register this is essentially the question.
He is supposed to register. You are supposed to register, Martin, and you need to go into the Managed DID portal and create the brand and campaign for that client.
Yeah, so these would be low volume mixed.
And that would be low volume mixed, right?
With number pulling on,
68 is the question, numbers. So
Okay, so I was under the impression from previous communications from SkySwitch that the brand registration was extended until the end of October without the initial $54 per brand registration fee. So now is that moved back to October 1st?
It's not, there's no, it's $4 per brand fee. There were some miscommunications from our original communications from messaging that we got from TCR. Maybe it was a typo or whatever, but it's the T-Mobile registration fee is $50 and it's 2 campaigns. That was originally September, then it was October, and now it's pushed back to December 1st. So hopefully that clears that up.
Okay, more more suggestions about grouping together for complaining with the FCC. I will look into these, and it's definitely something that's been on our minds, and just haven't really explored deep into that yet. I think we're too busy trying to implement so we can continue to send SMS in the first place. But
Yeah,
it's definitely something we'll look into.
right. That process is going to take some time, but it does need to be sooner than later. And I'll make a note to try to follow up on that.
Yeah, so this webinar, you'll get a recording of the webinar if you signed up. Oh, got a couple more questions. Please clarify if all campaigns with more than 50 TNs are considered pooling, or does it depend on the type?
A campaign, if you're trying to put more than 50 or more numbers under one campaign, it would be considered pooling. You will not be able to put the 50th number assigned to a campaign. You will be hard limited in the IntelliQuint gateway to 49. And the only way that 49 is lifted to add multiple numbers is to submit number pooling submission form. And then once that's approved, IntelliQuint lifts that on the back end. You do not have to say, if you have growth with your company, say you start out, you want to submit, you have 60 numbers, you put 60 numbers, you get approved. There's no more approval process. That brand and that campaign with number pooling approved, that campaign can add additional numbers. They can go to 70 or 80 or 100. And without any additional paperwork or anything, IntelliQuint basically opens it off and takes off the 49 limit that's in the system, in their gateway. So what that means to you is, if you don't do it, and once we implement blocking outbound messages without a campaign ID, you will not be able to assign those phone numbers. You're not going to be able to assign all the phone numbers in our system. You're only going to be able to sign up to 49 numbers for a campaign without number pooling in our portal. The reason it's going to fail in the others is because you have not been approved for number pooling through the submission process with TCR. I mean, with IntelliQuint and Cineverse.
And Frank, we've reached out to a few that we know are going to be doing pooling, so that we can add them to that list of 10, right? So if somebody knows they're going to do pooling, they could reach out to us and say, I want to get on that next list of 10.
Yeah, I actually have a list that I pulled the reports on with Alona on by domain SMS enabled phone numbers. So anything that's over 50, you will be getting an email today with information on how to fill out this number pooling form. And in order to fill out the number pooling form, you need to first have your brand and campaign created. So when you create a brand and then a campaign, and in the campaign, whether it's low volume mix or some other use case, after you do that, there's an attribute section. It says embedded links, and number pooling is in there. That's where you select number pooling if you know you have more than 50 numbers. If you even have less than 50 numbers and you think you're at, say, 45, and you think within a year you're going to go, they're going to add more numbers, or that company's been steadily growing, maybe a good idea to get that done or get on the list, because like I said, we're aggregating those submissions right now, and basically passing through that aggregated cost, because it is a $500 per submission form, but you can submit up to 10 campaigns. Has nothing to do with the brands. It's 10 campaigns for that form, on that form.
Right. So question along that lines, does pooling affect bad actors?
Pooling is tied to a campaign, and that campaign is unique to the brand. So no, nothing protects bad actors. There's no campaign that protects against bad actors. But what the whole purpose of this is, if there is a bad actor, it won't affect the aggregators like IntelliQuint, like SkySwitch, like
I
a
think what they're
reseller.
saying is, as we pool together different numbers on our platform to reduce the cost of the $500 fee, how would that work if resellers are going in together?
Then they could be taken out by a bad actor on another company. And that, I don't think that risk is worth it. If you got
Right.
that many numbers and you have, we thought about this, it was crossed our minds many a times, like, why don't we just cover everybody? The problem is, I think most of our resellers know their customers pretty well, but there's probably, exceptions out there that, don't really know their business, and, what they're buying phone service and well, I could tell you just from, sometimes we get inquiries, subpoenas and so forth. So trust me, I wouldn't pull my numbers with together. It's not, it's a chance there's something bad could come back, and a bad actor could affect other good companies. So.
Okay. So sorry for my ignorance, but why would we have to register a brand with T-Mobile if our numbers are with IntelliQuint? And that's just to send two T-Mobile phone numbers. There is, right now it's all blanket. So once you register a brand and campaign, the campaigns are registered. Both of those are registered with the TCR, but you have to pay the T-Mobile fees to be able to send to T-Mobile, and there's no opting out of one wireless carrier at this point. But again, there may be in the future if they raise their fees even more. Okay, got a few people asking about the number pooling list. Where should we email?
Yeah, we'll be posting this in the docs. We're addressing those resellers that we know that we can see the counts that are over the 50 numbers per company domain. We apologize. Like I said, the whole $500 fee just came to us on October 1st, and then there's been changes with TCR, with other use cases, charity, etc. So we've been working through this process. So, but those will be going out today, and we will post the form for resellers to submit for pooling in our docs, and then we can probably add that into the portal, Alona, as well.
Okay, so if we already created a campaign that we did not register for pooling, can we use the campaign and turn on pooling later? So if they have like 30 numbers now and grow into 50 numbers in the future.
At this time, it's not possible, correct, Alona?
Correct, not possible at all.
Right, but to me, that's one of those pragmatic decisions that should be able to be changed, right? Why wouldn't you be able to turn on pooling and then still go through that approval process? It shouldn't be a big change at TCR, and that's my opinion. But today you cannot do that. You would have to create a new campaign and request pooling of numbers, and then submit the form, and then you could, cancel the original campaign and move those numbers over to the new one.
So you're still going to be on the hook for the fees for the original campaign. So you'd probably want to time it towards the end of the term. If it's going to grow, run it out for 3 months, turn off, auto renew, and then create a new campaign towards the end of that 3 months, then migrate your numbers.
Right. For those of you who missed the first webinar, we explained that when you create a campaign in TCR, it's a 3-month commitment. So if it's a low mix volume, you got $2, for 3 months, $6 basically commitment. So And then there's a is an auto renewal toggle switch that we've made available in our portal, and that's how you would turn it off. We will not turn it off for you. It would be something that you will turn it off. You will have to turn off in order to stop the billing. So if your customer, we'll make it part of the tear down process, Alona. If you should happen to have a customer that would leave you, we'll make it just like when we disconnect a phone number, we will, we disconnect SMS, so it would drop off, and we could have a process that would look at, see there's no phone numbers assigned to a campaign, and we can either alert you about that or potentially turn it off.
Okay, so why is SkySwitch blocking outbound messages starting November 1st? I thought I read that companies have until January 1st, 2022 to register with the TCR.
No, well, because there's no violations are being enforced as of October 1st. That's the first reason. Nobody has extended the grace period for violations per the guidelines, CTIA guidelines. That's, the sex, the hate, the drugs, gambling, those types of things happening. But I haven't read it was to January 1st.
Yeah, I haven't seen that date either. Yeah, if you have a source on that, it was an anonymous user, so I don't know who it is, but if you have a source, just send in a support ticket or send either myself or Frank an email, and we can look at it. Last question, I think this new fee of $500 is not retroactive with brands that have already been approved, correct?
It's
So have we-
effective October 1st.
Yeah, and we have not, because we just got the form, we just got the process, and there have been no submission. So that $500 registration process for number pooling is in effect October 1st. That means anything that we are registering for number pooling will be in effect, those charges will be passed through to the reseller. So like I said, we're putting 10 campaigns at a time. That's our maximum that we're allowed to do. And that will bring it down to $50 per campaign to the reseller.
Oh, one more. For clients with more than 50 users, could we create 2 identical campaigns and split the TNs between them?
You're getting into potentially snowshoeing there a little bit, but I don't know how that will play out.
So maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah, anything.
My opinion is it'd be really irresponsible for someone to start enforcing. I mean, I don't want to lighten or discount the way the rules read today, but I'm hoping there's good judgment and responsibility from the wireless carriers down. And I think for the most part, what I'm seeing right now is they're letting things go status quo for the most part. I think I wish AT&T and T-Mobile were the big proponents of the TCR type of ecosystem. Verizon was like, we'll just charge A2P surcharges. And that's what they're doing. They got their own algorithms they're running, they're monitoring. They all can count, the opt-ins, or the opt-outs and the spam and the stops, and they can flag and block, in their network. I think that's a more, that would have been a better approach. All the carriers are charging A to P surcharges. We got origination A to P surcharge fees. We have termination A to P surcharge fees. It really has been a game changer in the way things are done. So I think we gotta keep plugging along. I think the compliance part, no matter whether it's FCC or TCR or Wireless Carriers Association, CTIA, whoever, whatever is going to happen, however this is going to land, that opt-in, opt-out and help is always going to be there, you know. And I don't think anybody, no matter who's in charge, that's always going to have to be in place. So we're building that into the portal. You know, messaging is like the wild, wild west. For those of you who have been using messaging, it's very difficult sometimes to get an NNID, which is basically the routing number for the message, and that's separate of the voice. You know, we're all familiar with porting and LNP, and that's all done through NPACT, and that's the authoritative database for that. But the SMS is the other half of a phone number, and the other half of a phone number for communications, for messaging, and that routing is separate. So that's why you can have control of the voice with the underlying carrier, but you do not have control of the SMS. That customer signed it off to Zipwhip or some other texting service, and that's why they can operate messages separate of the voice, and you can control the voice. And that's why we ask you when you port in phone numbers, you know, are you going to enable SMS, or do you intend to, or leave it behind? Because we surely don't want to break someone's SMS messages. And basically it's a choice that we ask you to tell us what you want when you're doing porting with us. So hopefully that gives you kind of the big picture and the underlying dependencies that are needed to make all this stuff work. But it's been a big resource drain on us, to be honest with you. But it's the future, there's no question. So we're investing in it. We're investing in the team's investing in it, and we hope to make the experience for you a lot less, you know, cumbersome. So any suggestions that we can do will be, you know, please pass them along.
And to clarify, there was one more question about the $500 fee, and they're asking how that works for a small shop. And just the $500 fee is after you get past the 49 numbers. So you would do low volume mixed, and it's going to be quite a bit lower of a cost for a small business like a mom and pop shop.
Yeah, most of you, I encourage you to go look at pull your SMS reports, look at your phone numbers that are assigned, look at your messages. And I think it'll put some calmness into this subject matter. There's really, you know, we have a few dozen that are over that 50 number per domain. It's those of you know who you are if you're on this call. But I think you know, we're gonna be okay. We'll be a leader in this, and I think we're gonna be able to really help our resellers navigate these waters in the future. So I think we're gonna differentiate ourselves in this area actually by doing what we're doing. I think the other smaller providers out there are gonna be, you know, it's just a lot of work. It's a lot of tedious work and development work to make all this happen the way we're doing it right now. So, and really appreciate everybody's business. So I want you guys all, everybody to know that it's on this call. It's a very simple business model. We work for you, and we appreciate it. Appreciate your business.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. We really appreciate your business, and well, we'll see you on the next one. Maybe there will be another 10 DLC if more stuff changes in the future.
Yeah, hopefully not.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.